The morning they left me started like any other camping trip. We'd done this dozens of times before, my parents and I heading out to some remote location for what they called character-building exercises. But this time, when I woke up in my sleeping bag on that October morning, the campsite was eerily quiet. No sound of Dad making his terrible instant coffee. No Mom complaining about the cold. Just the wind rustling through the pine trees and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I unzipped my tent to find their gear gone. Their tent, their backpacks, even the cooler with our food, all vanished. The only thing left was a folded piece of paper weighted down by a rock next to the dead campfire. My hands trembled as I picked it up and read the words that would change everything. Timothy, find your way home. This is your lesson. You're 18 now. Time to prove you're the man we raised you to be. I read it 3 times before the reality hit me. They'd actually done it. They'd abandoned me in the middle of nowhere, 40 miles from the nearest town, with nothing but the clothes on my back and whatever was left in my own tent. No phone. They'd taken it from me the night before, claiming it was distracting me from nature. No money, no food. Just me in the wilderness they'd decided would be my teacher. The anger came first, hot and overwhelming. I screamed until my throat was raw, kicking at the cold ashes of the fire pit, throwing rocks at trees. How could they do this? My own parents? Sure, they'd always been harsh, always pushed me to extremes. But this was abandonment. This was cruelty beyond anything I'd imagined. But as the sun climbed higher and my rage burned itself out, fear crept in. I was alone, really, truly alone. The nearest road was at least 15 miles through rough terrain. I had water in my bottle, maybe enough for a day if I rationed it, some energy bars I'd stashed in my sleeping bag, a knife, a lighter, not much else. I sat there for what felt like hours, paralyzed by the choice in front of me. Part of me wanted to curl up and wait, convinced they'd come back, that this was just another one of their twisted tests. But deep down, I knew better. This was exactly the kind of thing Richard and Patricia Coleman would do. In their minds, they weren't abandoning their son. They were forging him into steel. By noon, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to play their game. I wasn't going to stumble home defeated and broken, begging for their approval. If they wanted to abandon me, fine. But I'd survive on my own terms. I spent the afternoon taking inventory of everything I had. 3 energy bars, 1 full water bottle and an empty backup, a Swiss Army knife, a lighter with maybe half its fuel left, my sleeping bag and tent, some rope, a flashlight with dying batteries, a first aid kit with basic supplies. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. The smart move would have been to head straight for the road, try to hitchhike to town, but something in me rebelled against that idea. They expected me to panic, to run home like a scared child. Instead, I decided to do what they'd taught me, survive, not to prove anything to them, but to prove something to myself. I broke down my tent methodically, fashioning a makeshift pack from the material, found a sturdy branch to use as a walking stick, studied the sun's position to orient myself. I knew roughly where we were, the San Bernardino National Forest, near Big Bear Lake. If I headed west, I'd eventually hit Highway 38. From there, I could make my way to town. But I didn't head west. I went north instead, deeper into the forest. There was an old ranger station about 10 miles that way, abandoned for years, according to the maps I'd studied on previous trips. If I could make it there, I'd have shelter, maybe even some forgotten supplies. It was a risk, but everything about this situation was a risk. The hike was brutal. Every step reminded me of all the training my parents had put me through over the years, the forced marches when I was 12. The winter camping trip when I was 14, where they'd made me sleep outside the tent to toughen up. The time they'd left me at a mall 30 miles from home with no money when I was 16, just to see if I could find my way back. Each memory fueled my determination. They thought they were teaching me to be strong, but all they'd really taught me was that I couldn't rely on anyone but myself. Well, lesson learned. As darkness fell, I was still 3 miles from the ranger station. My water was gone, my legs were screaming, and the temperature was dropping fast. But I kept moving, using the flashlight sparingly to preserve what little battery I had left. Every shadow could have been a bear or mountain lion. Every sound made my heart race, but I didn't stop. The ranger station appeared through the trees like a miracle, just as my flashlight died completely. It was small, maybe 15 by 20 feet, with boards over the windows and a padlocked door. But the padlock was rusted through, and with some effort, I managed to break it off with a rock. Inside, the beam of moonlight through the door revealed a dusty paradise. An old wood stove sat in the corner. Shelves lined one wall, mostly empty but with a few treasures. Some canned goods that were probably years past expiration, a handful of emergency flares, and miracle of miracles, an old hand-crank radio. I spent the next hour getting the wood stove going with scraps of paper and dried leaves from outside, carefully nurturing the flame until it caught on some broken furniture I'd found stacked in the corner. The warmth was overwhelming. I hadn't realized how cold I'd been until I wasn't anymore. The canned peaches I found were definitely questionable, but hunger won over caution. They tasted like metal and sugar, but they were calories, and that's what mattered. As I ate, I cranked the radio, searching through static until I found a clear station. The sound of another human voice, even just a DJ introducing the next song, almost made me cry. As weather is resin, either discontented as action song. I can't about on the next finesen. That's when the plan started forming in my mind. I wasn't going home. Not to their home, anyway. I was done being their experiment, their project. If they wanted to abandon me, then I'd stay abandoned. I'd make my own way. The radio DJ mentioned the date, the 15th of October, and that tomorrow was Saturday. Perfect. The town would be busy, full of weekend tourists. It would be easy to blend in, to find odd jobs, maybe even a place to stay. I had skills, thanks to all their training. I could survive. I spent the rest of the night planning, using charcoal from the stove to write on the wooden floor what I needed, where to go, how to disappear. By the time dawn broke through the cracks in the boarded windows, I wasn't a scared, abandoned kid anymore. I was a young man with a purpose. The hike to town took most of the day, but I made it by late afternoon. Big Bear Lake was bustling with tourists, just as I'd hoped. I cleaned myself up as best I could in a gas station bathroom, then hit the streets. A restaurant owner took pity on me, offering me $20 to help unload a delivery truck. Another shop owner paid me to sweep his storefront. By nightfall, I had $60 and a lead on a hostel that didn't ask too many questions. The next morning, I found a payphone and made the call I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Timothy Coleman. My parents abandoned me in the San Bernardino National Forest 2 days ago. I'm 18, so I guess it's not technically child abandonment, but I want to file a report. The dispatcher's voice changed immediately, becoming more alert. Are you safe now? Do you need medical attention? I'm safe. I made it to Big Bear Lake on my own, but I want this on record. Richard and Patricia Coleman left me at a campsite 40 miles from civilization with no food, no phone, no money, and a note telling me to find my own way home. She took down all the information, assured me an officer would follow up, but I knew nothing would come of it. I was 18, legally an adult. My parents would probably spin it as some kind of wilderness therapy or coming-of-age ritual. And honestly, I didn't care if they faced consequences. I just wanted the paper trail. The officer who found me at the hostel 3 hours later was sympathetic but confirmed what I'd suspected. Unless you were injured or they prevented you from leaving, there's not much we can charge them with. You're an adult. They're not obligated to provide for you anymore. I know, I told him. I just wanted it documented. He gave me a card for social services, some information about local resources, but I didn't need their help. I'd already gotten a job washing dishes at one of the restaurants, and the hostel owner had offered me a deal. I could stay for free if I helped with maintenance and cleaning. 2 weeks passed before my parents tried to contact me. The hostel owner knocked on my door one evening. Timothy, there's someone on the phone for you. Says she's your mother. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the phone in his outstretched hand. Then I took it. Timothy? My mother's voice was calm, controlled. It's time to come home. No. Silence. Then, this is ridiculous. You've made your point. You survived. We're proud of you. Now come home. You abandoned me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You left your son in the wilderness with nothing. I could have died. But you didn't. Father's voice came through. They were on speaker. You survived. You thrived, just like we knew you would. The lesson is complete. No, Dad. Your lesson is complete. Mine is just beginning. Don't contact me again. I hung up and immediately asked the hostel owner to tell anyone who called that I'd moved on. Then I threw myself into surviving, really surviving, not their manufactured version of it. Within a month, I'd saved enough to rent a tiny studio apartment above a sporting goods store. The owner, Jim, was a former Army Ranger who recognized something in me, maybe the same hollowness he'd carried back from his own trials. He offered me a job in the store and started teaching me real wilderness skills, not the harsh trials my parents had put me through, but actual, practical knowledge. You've got good instincts, he told me one day as I helped him organize camping gear. But instincts aren't enough. You need technique, knowledge, respect for the wilderness, not fear of it. Under Jim's mentorship, I learned to read topographical maps, to properly purify water, to build shelters that would actually protect someone, not just test their endurance. He taught me first aid, navigation by stars, how to identify edible plants. But more than that, he taught me that strength didn't come from suffering. It came from knowledge, preparation, and respect. My parents tried to contact me several more times over the next few months, letters sent to the sporting goods store, phone calls that Jim politely declined, even a private investigator who showed up one day, looking tired and slightly embarrassed. Your parents just want to know you're okay, he said. Tell them I'm surviving, I replied, and went back to work. The seasons changed. Winter in Big Bear was harsh, but nothing compared to the cold I'd felt that morning in the abandoned campsite. I worked, I learned, and slowly, I began to heal. Jim became more than a mentor. He became the father figure I'd never really had. He taught me without cruelty, challenged me without breaking me. One spring evening, as we were closing up shop, he made me an offer. I'm thinking about starting a wilderness survival school. Real survival skills, not that macho nonsense some places teach. Interested in being my partner? I didn't hesitate. Yes. We spent the summer building the program. Jim had the knowledge and reputation. I had the energy and a burning desire to teach survival the right way, with compassion, respect, and actual useful skills. No abandonment, no cruelty, just knowledge that could save lives. Our first class had 5 students. The second had 12. By fall, we were booked solid every weekend. Word spread about the survival school that actually cared about its students, that taught real skills without the drill sergeant mentality. I threw myself into the work. Every student who came through our program left more confident, more capable, but never broken. We taught them to respect the wilderness, not to conquer it. To work with nature, not against it. It was everything my parents' version of survival training hadn't been. 3 years passed. The business grew. We hired additional instructors, expanded our offerings. I got certified as a wilderness first responder, then as a leave no trace trainer. I was building something real, something valuable. Then one day, a familiar face walked into the store. My sister, Emma, now 21, stood in the doorway looking uncertain. Tim? I hadn't seen her since that morning at the campsite. She'd been away at college when they'd abandoned me, but she'd known what they were planning. She'd tried to warn me the week before, but I hadn't understood her cryptic messages. How did you find me? It wasn't hard. Your survival school has quite a reputation. Mom and Dad don't know I'm here. We sat in the back office, 2 siblings separated by more than just years. She told me how our parents had spun the story, how I'd overreacted to a simple survival test, how I'd always been too sensitive, too weak to appreciate their methods. But I knew better, she said. I went through their training too, remember? The difference was, I learned to play their game, to give them what they wanted so they'd leave me alone. She told me about graduating college, about the therapy she'd started, about slowly extracting herself from their influence. They're broke, Tim. Dad made some bad investments. Mom's boutique psychology practice dried up when word got out about what they did to you. That police report you filed, it became public record. Some blogger found it, wrote about it. They became infamous in certain circles, the parents who abandoned their son to teach him a lesson. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, vindication, pity, and strangely, nothing at all. They want to reconcile, Emma continued. They need money, and they know you're doing well. Of course they do. Emma left with my phone number but a clear message. I'd built my life without them, and I intended to keep it that way. But I should have known Richard and Patricia Coleman wouldn't give up that easily. 2 weeks later, they showed up at the school during one of our weekend courses. I was in the middle of teaching a group about emergency shelter construction when I saw them standing at the edge of the clearing. My father, still tall and imposing but somehow diminished. My mother, her usually perfect hair showing gray at the roots. Continue with the exercise, I told my students, then walked over to them. You look well, my mother said. You look desperate, I replied. My father's jaw clenched, the same tell he'd had my whole childhood when things weren't going according to his plan. We're your parents, Timothy. Whatever happened between us, that doesn't change. You're right, you are my biological parents. The people who were supposed to protect me, nurture me, help me grow. Instead, you abandoned me in the wilderness to prove some twisted point about strength and survival. We made you strong, my mother insisted. Look at what you've accomplished. You wouldn't be here without our training. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I succeeded despite you, not because of you. Every student who comes through this program learns more about real survival in a weekend than I learned from you in 18 years, and they leave empowered, not traumatized. We need your help, my father said, cutting straight to the point. We made some financial mistakes. We're facing foreclosure. Your mother's practice. The practice where she advocated for radical resilience therapy, where she encouraged other parents to traumatize their children in the name of strength, that practice? My mother flinched. It was based on sound psychological principles. It was based on cruelty masquerading as wisdom, and now you're facing the consequences. Jim appeared beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. Everything okay here, Tim? Just some uninvited guests. They were just leaving. But my father stepped forward. We're not leaving until we talk to our son. I'm not your son, I said quietly. You gave up that right when you left me in that campsite. I'm Timothy Coleman, co-owner of Big Bear Survival School, certified wilderness instructor, and someone who actually helps people instead of breaking them. But I'm not your son. They didn't leave. Not that day, anyway. They checked into a local motel and proceeded to make their presence known around town, showing up at the restaurant where I sometimes ate dinner. Shopping at the sporting goods store, always visible, always reminding me they were there. Jim finally sat me down one evening. You know, sometimes the best way to deal with a problem is to face it head on. I faced them. I told them to leave. No, you told them off. That's different. What do they actually want? Money, help, for me to forgive them and pretend everything's fine. And what do you want? I thought about it for a long time. I want them to understand, really understand what they did, not just to me, but to themselves. They spent so much time trying to make me strong through suffering that they never realized strength comes from support, from knowledge, from community. Jim smiled. Sounds like you know exactly what to do. The next day, I found my parents at their motel and made them an offer. You want my help? Fine, but you'll earn it. You'll take our basic survival course. Not the weekend version, the full 2-week intensive. You'll learn what real survival training looks like. And if you complete it, if you really engage with it, then we'll talk about what comes next. My mother started to protest, but my father put a hand on her arm. What are the terms? Same as any other student. You follow instructions, you work with your classmates, you leave your egos at the trailhead, and you pay full price. Consider it a loan against whatever help you're asking for. They exchanged looks. They didn't have the money for the course, I knew that, but I also knew their pride wouldn't let them admit it. We'll start Monday, my father said. I arranged for them to work off the course fee by helping with camp maintenance and meal prep. It was humbling for them. Richard Coleman, former executive, washing dishes. Patricia Coleman, psychologist, hauling firewood. But they did it. The course itself was revelatory, watching my parents struggle with basic concepts that they'd never actually learned properly, seeing my father's hands shake as he tried to start a fire with proper technique instead of brute force, watching my mother's facade crack when a fellow student, a young woman who'd survived domestic abuse, talked about how the course was helping her reclaim her sense of safety in the world. On day 3 of the course, something shifted. We were teaching navigation skills, and my father was paired with a 60-year-old grandmother named Martha, who'd signed up to feel more confident hiking with her grandkids. You're overthinking it, Martha told him gently as he struggled with the compass bearing. Here, let me show you what Tim taught us yesterday. Watching my father, the man who'd never admitted weakness, never asked for help, except instruction from this kind stranger, was surreal. But more than that, watching him actually listen, actually learn, was transformative. That night, around the campfire, we did our daily check-in circle. Each person shared something they'd learned or struggled with. When it was my mother's turn, she was quiet for a long moment. I learned that I've been afraid my whole life, she said finally. Afraid of being weak, of being vulnerable. So I built this whole philosophy around eliminating weakness, not realizing I was just spreading my fear to others, to my children. The circle was silent, respectful. Then Martha reached over and squeezed my mother's hand. Recognizing fear is the first step to real courage, dear. My father went next. I learned that I don't actually know how to survive. I know how to endure, how to suffer, how to push through pain. But Tim and Jim, they're teaching actual survival, how to work with nature, not against it, how to thrive, not just persist. He looked directly at me. We called it training, but it was just trauma. We thought we were making you strong, but we were just passing on our own damage. The admission hung in the air like morning mist. I wanted to say something, but Jim caught my eye and shook his head slightly. This was their journey now. The rest of the course continued with my parents fully engaged. They struggled, they learned, they grew. Watching them help other students, seeing them celebrate small victories, successfully purifying water, building a shelter that actually kept them warm and dry. It was like watching the people they could have been if fear hadn't driven them to such extremes. On the last night, we do a solo experience. Each student spends the night alone in the wilderness, but with proper gear, training, and clear boundaries. It's a chance to practice skills and build confidence, not a trial by abandonment. I checked on each student throughout the night, as we always did. When I reached my mother's site, she was sitting by her small fire, crying. "I'm sorry," she said when she saw me. "I'm so sorry, Timothy. We left you. We left our child alone and afraid and called it love. It wasn't love, it was cruelty." The course ended on a crisp October morning, almost exactly 4 years after they'd abandoned me at that campsite. The graduates received their certificates, took group photos, exchanged contact information. My parents lingered as others departed, uncertain. We sat in the same clearing where I'd first taught them about proper shelter construction. The morning sun filtered through the pines, and for a moment I could almost imagine we were a different family, one that had chosen connection over conquest. "So," my father said, "we completed your course." "You did, and you actually learned from it," which honestly surprised me. "We've learned a lot these past 2 weeks," my mother said. "About survival, yes, but more about ourselves, about the damage we caused trying to prevent damage." I nodded. "And what do you plan to do with that knowledge?" They exchanged glances. "We want to make amends," my father said, "not just to you, but to others we've influenced." Patricia's already reached out to former clients, offering refunds, apologies. "I've been writing, trying to counter the harmful philosophy we spread." "That's a start," I said, "but you came here because you needed financial help." "We did," my mother admitted. "We do. But these 2 weeks, Timothy, what you've built here is incredible. The way you teach, the community you've created, the lives you're changing. It's everything we claimed to be doing but never were." I pulled out an envelope I'd been carrying for 3 days, waiting for this moment. "There's enough here to cover your immediate needs, stop the foreclosure, pay off the most pressing debts. It's not a gift, it's a loan. You'll pay it back by volunteering here, helping other students the way Martha and the others helped you. You'll learn what real strength looks like, the strength to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to support others without breaking them." My father's hands shook as he took the envelope. "Why? After everything?" "Because that's what real survival looks like, Dad. We take care of each other, we build each other up, we don't abandon people, even when they've abandoned us." "But..." I held up a hand as my mother started to speak. "This doesn't make us a family again. That trust, that bond, you broke it. Maybe it can be rebuilt, maybe not. But you'll have to earn it, day by day, through actions, not words." They nodded, understanding that this was more than they could have hoped for. Over the following months, they became fixtures at the survival school. My father discovered he had a talent for teaching knotwork, his executive precision translating well to the methodical practice. My mother, freed from her toxic philosophy, found genuine joy in helping anxious students overcome their fears with compassion instead of harsh challenges. Slowly, carefully, we built something new. Not a restoration of what we'd had. That family was gone forever, buried in that cold campsite where they'd left me, but something different. A working relationship that occasionally felt like more. Shared meals that sometimes included laughter. Conversations that gradually moved from surface level to substantial. 1 year later, on the 5th anniversary of my abandonment, we held a special ceremony at the school. Not for me, but for all the students who'd overcome their own abandonments, their own traumas, their own trials. My parents were there, not as my parents, but as assistants, as part of the community we'd built. As the sun set over Big Bear Lake, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I stood before the group and shared my story publicly for the first time. The abandonment, the survival. The choice to build rather than break. Real strength, I concluded, isn't about enduring suffering. It's about transforming it. It's about taking the worst thing that happened to you and using it to ensure it doesn't happen to others. It's about choosing connection over isolation, support over suffering, love over leaving. I looked at my parents, sitting in the circle with everyone else. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who need the most help, and sometimes helping them helps us heal too. Not because we forget what they did, but because we choose to be better than what was done to us. The circle erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. I was thinking about that scared 18-year-old kid, alone in a tent, reading a note that said, "Find your way home." He had found his way home. He just had to build it first. The survival school continues to grow. My parents continue to volunteer, slowly earning back not my trust, that may never fully return, but my respect. Emma visits regularly, finally free from the shadow of our upbringing. Jim remains my business partner, mentor, and chosen father figure. And me, I survive. Not the way they taught me, through suffering and isolation, but the way I learned despite them, through community, through teaching, through turning trauma into triumph, one student at a time. They abandoned me to teach me a lesson about survival. In the end, I taught them what survival really means. It means never leaving anyone behind, even the people who left you. It means building bridges where others burned them. It means choosing strength through compassion, not cruelty. That's the ultimate survival skill, not just living through the worst, but living beyond it. And that's the lesson I carry with me every day, the one I teach to every student who comes through our program. You are stronger than what tried to break you, and you never have to prove it by breaking anyone else.